FromSoft is easily one of the most influential video game development studios in the world. With masterpieces like the Echo Knight series and the adventures of Cookie and Cream under their belt, it's hard to believe that they managed to release such a broken and incomplete game. And of course, I'm talking about their most recent title, Elden Ring, not to be confused with their hit PlayStation 2 game Eternal Ring. While Elden Ring managed to get some gameplay elements and mechanics correct, it suffers from some very serious core problems that completely ruin the player experience. And with that, let's hop right into it. Before we talk about gameplay, the elephant in the room needs to be addressed. Elden Ring's story does not make any logical sense. Even if you play this game for 200 plus hours, good luck understanding anything going on. From my understanding, they decided to take a unique approach in the fact that the game itself contains no real coherent story, and instead you have to watch a 4-hour-long YouTube video to understand any of it. I can kind of understand where they were going with this, as it's supposed to be a nod to old NES games, where you had to read the instruction manual to understand the story, but it just did not work in this game's favor. For example, just try speaking to any NPC and they will likely just give you a 5-minute long riddle about fingers or some other nonsense. There's also a guy by the name of Dung Eater here at the round table. I would appreciate it if they kept their weird kinks out of the game. The only real logical character who doesn't try to speak to you in jumbled riddles is this guy here, Gideon Ofnir. He just tells you to go kill some bosses and that when you do so, you'll beat the game. Unfortunately, the vast majority of characters are not so straightforward. Also, the game is supposedly about an Elden Ring of some sort, or so I'm led to believe by the title, but I beat the game and it'd be more accurate to say it's about an Elden Tree. My only guess is this may have been a typo on the cover of the game, but this sort of mistake is unacceptable from a AAA studio. Honestly, I'm gonna have to deduct points for creativity as well, since this is clearly a ripoff of Yggdrasil, which is of course from the extremely popular anime Overlord. Aside from that, my only other complaint about this story is that they decided to add furries in the game. Kinda weird. Moving on to the gameplay, my first complaint is that the game is just too difficult. I know a lot of you are just gonna say get good or something, but I'm actually very good at video games, and despite this, even I struggled with this one somewhat. And when I say the game is hard, I don't mean in a fair and balanced way, like say Cat Mario for example. The devs are honestly trolling a little bit here, with the bosses especially. Let's take a look at the first boss, Grafted Scion. I'm not really sure why they would put this guy in here as the first boss. He literally is just dropped on your head before you even get a chance to do the tutorial. Also, at this stage of the game, you don't even get a chance to gain any levels at all, so you can't even grind it out and overlevel him. Luckily, it seems like there is a glitch that hasn't been patched yet, so if you die to him, it teleports you to a different area. Moving on, the second boss of the game, Tree Sentinel, is also pretty unbalanced. As soon as you finish the tutorial and move out into the open world, this tree horse dude is right in front of you, seemingly minding his own business. He just looks like a normal enemy, and there's no indication whatsoever that he's actually an extremely powerful in-game boss that you're supposed to come back to later. I can forgive the difficulty of the game, but something I cannot forgive is the complete unoriginality of the game. If you have any video game experience, I'm sure you already know that Elden Ring is a blatant ripoff of the game Dark Souls. There are many obvious copies throughout the entire game, like how grace sites are an obvious reskin of bonfires, rune fragments are reskins of souls, and the weapon enchanting is basically identical. They also clearly copied the medieval European theme, which is basically culture appropriation because FromSoft is Japanese. The least they could have done is credit the Dark Souls developers, Bandai Namco. Really though, the biggest crime in the gameplay department is that despite all of the babes they added, there's a complete lack of a romance mechanic. While they do have NPC quest lines and alternate endings you can do, this unfortunately isn't good enough. I think I speak for all gamers when I say we want Mommy Fia to do a little more than just hold us in her lap. Luckily, mods exist and the people can get what the people want. The last thing I want to say about the gameplay is that because of how many areas and bosses there are a lot of ways to gain XP and a lot of different routes you can go about gaining it. That sounds like a good thing at first, but because of this, it isn't really too difficult to over-level yourself for a lot of the fights. Since you can do this, it makes the game really easy, so I really wish that they made this game harder. Now on to my final point. I'm sure you're all aware that Elden Ring was not only nominated for Game of the Year, but actually won somehow. I personally think that the Game Awards lost all credibility back in 2016 when they gave the Game of the Year award to Overwatch. In case you forgot, this was the same year that Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2 was released. Anyway, while at the Game Awards, the FromSoft devs did something that I just find completely inappropriate. For some reason, one of the main developers, I think his name is Shigeru Miyamoto, brought his son up on the stage with him during their acceptance speech. After thanking everyone for the award, his son went up to the microphone and said this.
Hey, Matan. Real quick, I want to thank everybody and say that I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi, Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
I know this kid is Japanese and likely doesn't know English, so this was probably a mistranslation of some kind. But they should have at least used Google Translate or some sort of fact checker beforehand, because according to Wikipedia, Bill Clinton is actually a Baptist, so I'm not really sure how he could be a rabbi. Pretty reckless and shameful of FromSoft, not gonna lie. So yeah, this game sucks.